Hello, and welcome to All on This Together, a podcast that tells stories about the use of public transport, highs, lows, everything in between. My name is Emily Turner. I am a London, UK based public transport prolific rider, advocate, just someone generally excited about public transport. And I host this podcast where I bring guests in that tell their stories. I also have a lot of public transport related clothing. Today, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see, if I lean the correct direction, I am wearing a Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, my hometown, public transit shirt. Now, their transit agency is called ETS, Edmonton Transit Service. And at the bottom here, it says ET yes, but I think that means Emily Turner yes. So that's why I love this shirt. And I'm wearing it backwards because there's nothing on the front. It's all on the back, and it's much more interesting to see on YouTube. My guest today is someone who does a lot of formal advocacy work for not flying, but also public transport and active transport by virtue of that. Someone who has a lot of experience cycling, taking different journeys. I'm really excited to hear from her. But before I begin, I'm going to do my guess the location clip. I think this is quite an easy one, but it's a ferry, so I'm excited about that. So, if you're on YouTube, you can guess where that is. If not, just enjoy the music because I really love that theme music I picked out. But as I said, going to be having a guest here, and as if by magic, she is going to appear. All right, so I've got my guest Anna here. Anna, do you want to tell me a bit about yourself and your sort of public transport background?
Hi, Emily. Yes, sure. So I am Anna Hughes. I'm the director of a charity called Flight Free UK. And what we do is encourage people to travel without flying. But I have been a sustainable transport enthusiast for many, many years, long before I set up Flight Free UK. And I suppose the main thing is I've never owned a car. Is it confession time?
Go, please do.
I've never owned a car, so I suppose all of my journeys ever have been by bike or public transport. Pretty much that covers everything, right? And I used to work for Sustrans, so that's the sustainable transport charity. They run the National Cycle Network, or they manage the National Cycle Network, as well as encouraging people to avoid car use as much as possible. So, and use public transport. So I guess I've got a good background for this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we need more advocacy from people who've never owned cars, because I think there are lots of people out there and you just don't. And so many people go, "Oh, I couldn't exist without a car." And you're like, but people raise families, all these sorts of things without a car. And I mean, you do live on a boat, if I'm correct. I can see behind you. So you do live on transport. You live on transport. That is pretty exciting, isn't it?
That's true. I never really thought of it like that. Yes, I can take my home wherever I want to go.
Yeah, that's amazing. So obviously you've done tons of different advocacy and talking about active travel and public transport and things like that. Just wondering if you have any stories of sort of good journeys, memorable journeys. Obviously you've written whole books about cycling, so those are probably memorable journeys, but anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, for sure. I think I will mention right now about my travels around the UK. So I one of the books that you just referred to, my first book is called Eat, Sleep, Cycle, and that's about my 4,000-mile bike ride around the coast of Britain. And that was my first big bike adventure. And the reason I want to mention that first is because I think we tend to overlook the UK when we think about travel.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of assume that travel only counts when it's far away. And I actually did that bike ride to kind of prove the opposite, and to prove to myself and to other people. I mean, I didn't know what the answer was going to be, but the question was, can I have a genuine travel experience without actually going very far? And by the end, 10 weeks later, 4,000 miles later, then the answer was overwhelmingly yes. Of course, you don't have to go far. And yeah, so that was my first one, and I will definitely come back to talking about the UK, but I'm going to now kind of go off on a bit of a tangent,
Go for it.
because there have been, because I've done so much travel in the UK and a little bit in Europe, because obviously I don't fly and I haven't flown for 15 years. The places that you go are, I suppose, only restricted by the amount of time you have. So, you know, you could travel around the world if you had enough time. I have never done that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some international border issues as well sometimes, but yeah, theoretically, I've seen people who are like cycling. There's a woman I saw on Instagram who's cycling from Spain to China, I think, which is quite
Oh,
amazing.
wow. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is. Yeah, these are definitely dreams for the future.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think now is a difficult time anyway, geopolitically, for
Hmm.
international travel across borders. But yeah, it's possible. It is possible. Um, so there was one particular quirky journey that I want to tell you about, and that was to Copenhagen. So I took the
Hmm.
train to Copenhagen, and it was, so technically you could do it in a day from London if you get your connections. The connections are so tight though,
Hmm.
especially the first one in Brussels, but it is possible. But I took a day and a half to get there, so it was overnight in Brussels on the way, and then overnight in Hamburg on the way back. And the connections are from London. It is connections in Brussels, Cologne, Hamburg, and then you're in Copenhagen.
Hmm.
And the particularly quirky thing about this was the train went onto a ferry. I was like, what is happening? It was like, it blew my mind. It was so insane. So this is to get from Denmark, to get from Germany across to Denmark. So it goes across the sea between those two countries. And I mean, it was just incredible. Like, I love ferries anyway. Ferries are like
Hmm.
the most exciting form of
Yes.
travel, regardless of how far you're going. If you're just going from like mainland Scotland to an island that you can definitely see, it doesn't matter. It's still like this incredible adventure. You just get on board, and then the ferry pulls away from the land, and you feel like this
Hmm.
ancient explorer. um, anyway, so for the train, because obviously I love trains too, for the train to go on a ferry, I just could not get my head around it. It blew my mind. I was so happy, excited.
Did
And
you
yeah,
know that when you booked it, or was it just a surprise that you got on the?
I knew it was going to happen, but I hadn't really fully thought it through.
Hmm.
And then it came to the port, and it was like, oh my god, this is actually happening. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. um so yeah, and I have to, there's a little bit of a sad ending to the story, because that train doesn't go on that ferry anymore.
Yeah.
I know they rerouted it round the land border between Denmark and Germany, which is further in terms of kilometers, but it's quicker in terms of time, because it does actually take quite a lot of time to like
Yeah.
line up the ferry with the train. However, for all you train/ferry enthusiasts out there is still one place in Europe where the train still goes onto a ferry, and that is to get to Sicily.
Hmm.
So if you're going it's across the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily, and the ferry goes onto the the train goes onto the ferry, and that is now on my bucket list, because yes, please. I
Yes,
mean,
I
Sicily, yes, please, but train on ferry, yes, please.
definitely. Yeah, I did that Copenhagen journey as well, and I was just 22, and I just booked a train, and I had no idea it was going on the ferry, and we just got on it, and it was me. I'd ended up sitting with a couple of other like young traveling people, and we got
Mm.
up onto the deck, and we just didn't know what was happening, and we're like, we're on a boat now? It's an amazing thing. It was so windy that day. There's pictures of me barely hanging on to anything, just on the deck, and I've like trying to not flash everyone because I was wearing a dress, and it's just like, we were so excited about it. You're right. It's, yeah, the Sicily one's on my bucket list as well, because that's it's amazing experience to get to do that. And it's so integrated. It's just like, this is how things should be. Instead of, if you take a ferry, I've done the ferry from Liverpool to Belfast, and you basically have to like do Merseyrail and then either get a cab or just walk through the docks, which is not very nice. And it's just all the big like container like trucks and stuff. So it's, yeah, that level of integration is so nice.
Yeah, definitely. And that really helps to facilitate flight-free travel, right? Because
Hmm.
a lot of the time it's just too difficult or too complicated or too much of a pain. So I also went over to Dublin by ferry, and that's the train up to Holyhead and then the ferry to Dublin. And actually, I mean, the train journey is beautiful, like one of the best
Hmm.
in the UK along the north coast of Wales. It's just
Yeah.
stunning. But the times just didn't match up. So we sat in Holyhead for hours, and then on the way back, the same thing. Like, you know, we went to the pub and had a pint or whatever. But you'd rather it. It just needs to connect better, because
Yeah.
then it would be much more attractive to people, right? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. But having said that, the cost on that is really good. So the Irish Ferries and Stena Line, who runs that line,
Hmm.
they offer a rail and sail deal, which it was £49 when I did it, and it's probably still
Yeah.
about that. And
My
yeah,
partner was looking
that
at it the other
includes,
day and it was really
yeah,
cheap. Yeah.
yeah, that includes the train and the ferry. So, you know, don't spend hundreds of pounds getting to Holyhead in the first place on the train. Like, look at the rail and sail ticket, and that also counts for the other Stena Line journeys, which includes Stranraer to
Hmm.
O'Kenryan to Belfast, and then
Hmm.
Harwich to Hook van Holland. So yeah, a couple of different ones as well. Really good
Oh, I
value.
didn't realize that was included in the Harwich one. That's something I've been wanting to do as
Yes.
well. So that's cool to know about. Yeah,
Mm.
I took the ferry from Barcelona to Majorca earlier this year, and the ferry goes right into Palma, which is great, and then they take you on a bus to the outskirts of Palma to the ferry
Ah,
terminal. Don't have the option. You have to get on that
that's
bus
weird.
if you don't have a car. So you're like, we were right there. We were like a
Ah,
10-minute walk from our hotel, and we now have to get another city bus back into town. And you're just like, just
oh,
integrate it. It could be so good.
that's so strange. That's definitely one of my bucket list ones as well. The Mallorca trip. I'd love to get the
Yeah,
ferry there from
it's
Barcelona.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And as a cyclist, Majorca is the destination, though I admit that we had to get electric cycles because we weren't handling those hills that most of the cyclists were doing.
Yeah, but that's it, isn't it? Because as a cyclist, yeah, lots of people go to Mallorca because the roads are amazing, because the hills are
Mhm.
amazing, the weather's amazing. So I really want to do that, but of course, I'll get there by train and ferry.
Yeah, that's how we did it, and it wasn't bad. It was just, go to Paris, go to Barcelona. We stayed a few days in Barcelona, but then the ferry over, it's a pretty decent journey. It took a day to get to Barcelona, so yeah, it's one of those
Yeah.
things if they line up right. You said you want to come back to
Yeah.
your UK journeys.
Oh, definitely. Okay. So one of the ones that stands out, and again, so I just talked about cost in terms of being like making it cheap, because we often think if you don't fly, it's going to be more expensive.
Mhm.
But I got to Edinburgh for £10. Thank you very
Nice.
much. So this was a very memorable journey. This was the overnight coach from London to Edinburgh, and a friend and I decided we wanted to go up to Edinburgh to see the new Queensferry Bridge when it had just
Mhm.
opened.
Yeah.
So, there's the Fourth Railway Bridge, which is iconic, like the red
Yeah.
steel bridge. And then next to it, you've got the road bridge, which is the suspension bridge. And then
Yeah.
next to that, which has opened in the last 10 years, is the cable stayed new Queensferry
Yeah.
crossing.
Yeah.
And yeah, me and my friend, we're such bridge geeks. We were like, we have to go and see it and then cycle across the old bridge.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a shirt with the 3/4 bridges on it. I should have worn it today because I wear a transport themed shirt. But yes, yeah, no, they're amazing. Those three bridges lined up.
yeah, love it, love it. And so and if you're a bus or bike enthusiast, then the middle bridge now is, well, it was at the time just for buses and bikes. I don't
Hmm.
know if they've reopened it to more traffic now, but that's what it was at the time, which is brilliant because it's
Hmm.
a fantastic way to cross the water, and to have it all to yourself is amazing.
Hmm.
So yeah, we decided we couldn't afford to take the train, so we booked coaches, and therefore you can't take your bike on the coach unless it's a folding bike. So we had to borrow
Hmm.
folding bikes. So this is all part of our adventure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I borrowed a Brompton and stuck it in a bin bag or whatever you do, to stash it in this coach. And it wasn't very comfortable. it was like, it wasn't a lie down coach, it was a sit up coach.
Mm-hmm.
But there were people on there who knew what they were doing. Like, it was like 11:30 p.m. departure or something like that, and a few, like, my fellow passengers, straight away the bus pulled out. They had their eye masks on, they had their earplugs in, they had their neck pillows on, they were done. I was looking around thinking, wow, these guys know what they're doing, I will do that next time. So of course I didn't get much sleep, because sitting up in a chair with no eye mask or earplugs or neck pillow
Mm-hmm.
is not the most comfortable thing. But it didn't matter, because like 4 o'clock in the morning, the sun starts to rise over the East Coast, which is exactly where I'm, where the timing was perfect, because we just got to the coast by that point. So
It's
like, you
so
can see the
beautiful. Yeah.
sun, right, and the sun is rising over the sea, and you're thinking, I don't need to sleep. I just need like sunrise direct to my veins. And then of course we arrived in Edinburgh, went for breakfast, like with the most excited and awake we've ever been. And yeah, had a wonderful day just riding out to the bridge, and we rode to Glasgow as well. That was part of the adventure. So it was like a 2-day trip to Glasgow.
Yeah.
And yeah, slept very well that night.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you kind of have to, I was going to say, you have to deal with some discomfort sometimes, and I suppose you don't have to, but it's okay if you do. Like, overnight coaches are fine, and they're really affordable. Like, it just opens up travel if you can handle
Yeah.
it. And everyone can handle one night of discomfort, especially if you're on an adventure. So
Yeah. It's because I'm a big theater fan, so I used to go to the Fringe a lot in Edinburgh, and I took the overnight coach multiple times. And to be honest with you, I flew once, I think, back from Edinburgh to London, and I was super late, ended up missing an important appointment I was supposed to go to. And I was like, this never happens when I take the overnight coach. Like, everything goes smoothly. And you're right. I
yeah,
don't think it's that, you know, I often think to myself, like, oh, I'm older now, I probably couldn't do an overnight coach journey. And then I do it and I'm like, I'm fine.
yeah,
It's not something that's that bad for one night, and you end up saving
yeah,
like 70, 80 pounds, sometimes more, depending on how much advanced booking it is. And I think,
yeah,
yeah, I I hate being on planes, so I'll take the discomfort of
yeah.
the overnight coaches and
Yeah.
the beautiful views.
Yeah, that's true actually. It's like, it's not like planes are super comfortable. It's just, you can go further and it's a bit quicker, but like, what is time? I still got to have an amazing adventure in Edinburgh, which is a wonderful city. Like, people go there from all around the world. We've got this right on our doorstep. So
Yeah, and it's an experience, it's a story to tell, and, like, you're telling it now. I remember once taking it, and as soon as the bus pulled away, some guy pulled out 2 liters of iron brew, and I was like, "Wow, we're going to Scotland now. This is like all the stereotypes are coming through." So, yeah, but I think that's so much better of an experience than just, like, I got on a plane and I got off the plane and things like that, even if it's a little uncomfortable at the time.
yeah. Yeah, so another, um one of the things that I kind of said to myself when I stopped flying was, there is nowhere that I would want to go that I can't get to without using a combination of bike and train, and boat. And I still think that's true.
Mhm,
Um, and yeah, so a lot of my travels are taking my bike on the train, which
mhm,
I think maybe that's useful for your listeners, because that's something that is logistically a bit tricky.
mhm,
So maybe some tips on that is going to be helpful. But there've been, like, I've been to so many places, and most of it is in the UK, because it's just so easy to get around the UK by bike and train. Um, and there's one time, so I've been to the Lake District many times, and that's a wonderful place for cycling.
mhm.
And it's if you so you kind of need a combination of bike and train, because otherwise you do sort of need a car,
Yeah.
because once you've got to Windermere or Penrith, if you don't have any onward transport, you're a bit stuck, because then
Mhm.
that's then you're not able to access the rest of the Lake District. But so that's why having a bike is so brilliant. because as I say, the alternative is sort of that you have to have a car. So getting your bike on the train. Now, for years now, I've booked my bike on the train using social media. So you just because I used to spend hours on the phone, in a queue, going into the ticket office, speaking to somebody about getting my bike booked on. And then I realized you can just send them a message on Facebook or Twitter and they get back to you within 5 minutes and then it's done, booked. It's just so easy. And it means that you, it's just so less stressful. And you can, so for most intercity routes, like the long distance routes, you would need to book a bike space. So if you can get an advance ticket, it's nice and cheap. And then if you can then get your bike booked on, then you're set. If it's like a slow train or a local train or the type of train that you just show up on the day, usually you can just put your bike on without worrying about a booking or anything. But if it's one of those kind of intercity long distance trains, you really need to sort out a booking. And so some of the trains, the storage is dreadful. It's really frustrating. Like the GWR trains, they're fairly new, like within the last 10 years. And the bike storage is like a little cupboard and you have to pick your bike up and hook the front wheel over this hook.
Yeah, I've done that on LNER. It's not good.
It's crazy. Like I am a youngish 40 fit person. I've got a heavy bike, but it's fine. Like it's a fairly standard bike. And I can just about put my bike on those hooks. Imagine if I had like an electric bike, or if I had mobility issues, or if I was slightly older, or if I had any kind of thing that's not like this regulation, super fit, young, super slick wheeled bike. It just, it doesn't really make any sense to me because that's not integrated transport.
Yeah.
But some of the other ones are good. Like often you can put your bike in the guard van and that's perfect. You don't have to lift it up or anything, you know.
I've never seen that before. I've only seen ones with spaces on the train. That's interesting to know. Didn't know you could use the
so I'm just trying to think now which so the Avanti trains, there's like it's behind the driver. There's just a big space that's for bikes. So that's good. But it's a mixture.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, you know, if they don't make enough space for bikes, either people don't bring their bikes or they put them in wheelchair spaces, which isn't good, or luggage spaces or those kind of things. So it's like it just serves everyone to make bike space on the trains that's easy to use. Because I've struggled with those stupid hang your bike in the cupboard, can't even get the cupboard door closed situations. They're not great.
Something I wanted to mention as well, kind of along those lines. So we here in the UK, as with many places in the world, we had that time when rail travel started to decline and road travel was the future. So they shut loads of railway lines, right? This is kind of well known amongst transport enthusiasts. And we all blame that Dr. Beeching for shutting all the lines in the 1960s. And a lot of it was his fault, but not all. Anyway, I suppose the kind of advantage here now is that even though we can't take the train along those routes anymore, a lot of the time they've been converted into walking and cycling routes. And those routes are just magical. And it enables you to go places that you're away from traffic, completely away from traffic. You're within nature, and it's connecting places that you would otherwise have to go by road to connect. So like I recently went to see my friend in Bedford, and I could have taken the train from London to Bedford, but I chose to take the train from London to Sandy, I think it was, because there was an old railway line between Sandy and Bedford, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna add an extra 8 miles to my journey and just have this wonderful hour cycling along this old line. And it was just wonderful. It turned this little trip into an adventure. And I think that's sometimes like doing that, not just taking the transport to your destination, but seeing if you can go somewhere slightly different, like a little bit short or a little bit off to one side, and then making your way to your ultimate destination. It just turns the whole thing into an adventure. And that's something I remember now. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't just remember sitting on a train to Bedford. I definitely remember cycling there from Sandy. It was amazing.
Yeah, I love that as well when it's like, why don't I just try this different station? And then you get a whole different, I regularly go to Letchworth for a course and I decided to go one station beyond. And I was like, this little town is amazing. I love this place. And I just
Baldock.
walked it. Yeah, Baldock. Yeah.
Ah,
You know
okay.
Baldock?
I went to school in Letchworth and Baldock.
Yes, no. So my
Ah,
course is sort
nice.
of halfway between Letchworth Station and Baldock Station. And I was like, let's try Baldock. And I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful little place.
It
Yeah.
is. It's just one of those charming old coaching towns,
Mhm.
with lots of like timber framed buildings and that kind of thing, because that used to be the main Great North Road that used to just go straight
Ah,
through Baldock. So
yeah.
there are lots of pubs in Baldock. um, Partly also because Letchworth used to be a Quaker town, so there were no pubs in
Yeah, yeah,
Letchworth.
yeah.
So all of the pubs were in Baldock. That's where people used to go for their drinking houses. So yeah, recommended to anyone
Yes.
who wants to visit a Hertfordshire town.
Well, my course goes on for 3 years, so I'm sure I'll say to my colleagues, we'll go up to Baldock and get some drinks there. It's interesting that one of
Yeah.
the things that I think about, because I've done some of those, walked or cycled some of those old railway lines, which is really frustrating. It's something that, hopefully nationalizing the railways will make better. It's really frustrating if you're like taking one line that's on Anglia and then you get on your bike and you cycle to another line that's on Thameslink or something like that. And it's like, what I want to be able to do is get like a return ticket that includes this sort of cycling route instead of having to buy two tickets, which are more expensive than the return.
Mm,
And it's just one of those things
right.
that's like, if you could think about integrating the act of travel into this, it would be much better. And I don't know the way to do that. I'm not a policy expert, but yeah, that's one of my frustrations with those cycling paths.
Yeah, I feel like there needs to be kind of an oyster system for the entire UK, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't buy a return ticket for, from two stations, for example, but you would be able to go on Oyster to the first one, ride your bike to another one, and then Oyster your way back.
Yeah.
And that would just that would work out that you'd just done a return journey from zone whatever it was
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
back to your starting point. Yeah,
Yeah, and you'd be
we've
like,
solved
"Okay,
it.
I'm in this zone and I've crossed it." Yeah, I know. I wrote a joke piece about what I would do if I was transport secretary, and it included zones for everywhere in the country. But I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
how to actually work this out. That would be for the DFT civil servants to do. But yeah, I do think I
Yes,
agree.
the
There
big
needs to be.
brains.
Yeah, and you'd also like, you could have one for Newcastle and one for Manchester and things like that. So you have these different
Mm.
zones that people are traveling in. So like anywhere that's X kilometers from London would be kind of one big zone.
Right. So they have something similar in the Netherlands, as far as I'm aware.
Hmm.
And it is more of a, I don't know if it's like a tap-in scheme, but you
Hmm.
definitely pay, your ticket is priced by distance, but it's always really cheap. Like you can
Hmm.
go from Amsterdam to Groningen on a reasonable ticket. Like it, that's obviously more expensive than going from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, but
Yeah.
both of them are really reasonable price on the day. Yeah, it just, I mean, God, they've got it right there, haven't they? we need to we need to take much more of an example of the Netherlands as to how they do transport. They really know what they're doing.
Yeah. I have a friend visiting from the Netherlands next month, and she was like, "Oh," la, la," and then I was looking at going. She was going to Bristol, and I was looking for trains to visit her, and she's like, "Oh God, I have to book those in advance. I forgot it's not just book on the day, and it's the same price." And I was like, "Yeah, it's not the Netherlands here,
Yeah,
sadly."
yeah, it does feel like we kind of trip people up, don't we? We don't make
Yeah,
it easy, and it's, if you know what you're doing, if you're like an internet ninja, then you can get a good price, but
yeah.
you shouldn't have to be.
No, and I
Yeah.
think, like, as someone who's pretty informed about railways and travel, I still find it difficult and will sometimes have to ask more informed friends to be like, why is this so much more expensive than this way? How is this the best way to do this? And it's so, I just can't imagine for anyone who rarely or never books trains how intimidating that is. I had my parents and some friends visiting from Canada, and they were going down to Cornwall, and it was just like, we basically had to say to them, make sure you go to the ticket office now and book seats, or you're not going to get any seats anywhere. But if it doesn't tell you that, it's really frustrating, the sort of difficulties of the logistics of it all, and how it could be such an easy system. Other countries do it. Why can't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did a trip up to North Wales with my brother-in-law, and we could have taken the fast train, but we did split ticketing, and we worked it all out. Like we must have bought about 4 different tickets for one journey, and it was just mad. It was good
Yeah.
price, but you're like, why are we having to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
ridiculous.
why is it like, yeah, you're going through all those loops, and then someone else who just wants to buy a ticket and doesn't know that is paying 5 times as much as you. It's not a fair system, but alas. I guess that sort of leads me on to one of my questions that I always ask people is, what would you do to improve public transport?
Okay.
So I was just saying before we got cut off, what do you think as one thing, and I know we've talked about a lot of them already, would improve public transport in the UK or internationally if you want to go there?
I think in the UK it has to be the ticketing thing. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense when you are trying to book a journey that there's like 10 different types of tickets you can have. Why don't
Mhm.
we just have like 3 different types, and for the price on the day always be a good price?
Yeah.
um I mean, I like it that I can get like a £10 ticket to wherever if I book super in advance, but I shouldn't have to do that. I would rather forfeit that super cheap price and get just a reasonable price on the day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be my thing for the UK. And then in terms of international travel, like I feel like um, the pricing of trains on the continent is so much better. I think it's much more affordable. I would like to
Mhm.
see competition with the Eurostar so we can actually get to the continent a bit
Mm.
more easily and a bit cheaper.
Mhm.
But yeah, generally, I feel like when it comes to international travel, having things that sort of join up really, really well is important. And by and large, the journeys that I've done, things do seem to join up well. So apart from that Mallorca example that you just gave, but yeah, it is about integrating and making that journey just as easy as it possibly can be, because if
Mhm.
you're traveling without flying, chances are you're going to be using several different providers. Whereas if you're
Yeah.
flying, you just use one airline, right?
Yeah.
So making those several different providers talk to each other and everything to line up just takes away half the stress of the journey, and will really go a long way into making it more easy for people to, or more attractive for people to even try traveling without flying. But also, yeah, once they do it and realize that it's amazing and that it's not so complicated, then that's the key thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting, that comparison to flying, that I never thought about. The fact that, like, if you book a ticket with, say, Lufthansa, your flight actually might be provided by Air Canada or whatever. They're all connected in a way
Mm.
that there isn't a service necessarily to do that. There's some booking options where you can go, I'll book, Deutsche Bahn, you can book for basically most of Europe, but there isn't that kind of like just book the train and then they'll tell you what different companies you go with at each station. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to do on that.
Yeah, so I think Rail Europe is kind of the best option for that because they speak to lots of different providers. So you can just book through one platform your various different tickets. But having I've had several conversations with people this year and last year who are setting up new platforms to facilitate people buying tickets for international travel, which is
Amazing.
brilliant. And that kind of shows that people are moving towards moving towards flight-free travel, or at least wanting to. And the
Yeah.
industry is responding by providing these, or giving these apps and platforms and stuff. So direction of travel is in the right direction. That's good.
That's really positive news. Yeah. I guess other question I always ask, which we've talked about kind of, would be, what's your favorite form of public transport?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to pick the train as my favorite form of transport. I think it's because anytime I get on a train, whether that's in the UK or in Europe, it just feels like an adventure. So, and um it it's because it goes far and fast and it's comfortable and there's space and you can work and look out the window and do whatever you want to do. And it combines really well with other forms of transport. So I have a few times taken my bike on a high-speed train through Europe, which
Mhm.
means it just opens up Europe, and it means I can then go on a cycling adventure in a far-flung place, with a bit of logistical challenge, but it's generally works really, really well. So, yeah, as much as I love the other things, as much as I love boats, oh my god, I love boats. Yeah, it's got to be the train for me.
Amazing. I really love your just sort of positivity, and I think it's such an important way to sort of see things as an adventure. It's not, "Oh, this is a long slog." It's an adventure where you get to see different views and different people come and go, and it's yeah, I think that spirit is really important to advocating for public transport and getting more people to use public transport.
Yeah.
Um, just to finish off, anything you'd like to plug or tell people to listen to, read, all those sorts of things? Go crazy.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity, Emily. I would, of course, plug my book, which is handily right here. So this is Eat, Sleep, Cycle, a bike ride around the coast of Britain. And this is kind of my first big adventure. And I I wrote this to show how amazing the UK is and to encourage other people to explore it. So yeah, remembering right back to the beginning when I said, could I have an adventure without leaving the UK? And the answer is yes, yes. And that's you can buy that on my website, which is annacycles.co.uk.
I'll
And
put the
I
link
am
in the chat or
oh
link in
cool, thank you. Yes,
description, things like that.
great,
Yeah,
thank you. And then yeah, I'm also Eat Sleep Cycle on Twitter.
great.
And then of course my work, so my charity, which is Flight Free UK, that is at Flight Free UK on everything. So Twitter,
Mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, even those LinkedIn, etc. And then our website is flightfree.co.uk. And the idea there is to, well, first of all, it's about giving people the information about the carbon impact of flying. Because,
Mhm.
yeah, as consumers, we're not really informed very well. So
Mhm.
it's that side. But the other aspect is showing how it can be done, how you can travel without flying, and sharing stories of other people who've done lots of adventures and travels and trips without flying. So really inspirational. Hopefully people enjoy reading our website. Yeah, so that's flightfree.co.uk. And you can sign up to a flight free year on that website if you want to. So yeah, it's all about changing people's habits and changing the way we view travel really as society. So yeah.
I love it. That's amazing. And also you have the Flight Free podcast as well, which I've been on. So if you want to check that
We
out, do
have.
do take a
Yes,
look at
yes.
Anna's Flight Free podcast. Um, thank you so much. I really just enjoy your positivity about travel and also UK travel because you find people going, "Oh, I'm just going on holiday to Wales." And you're like, "Wales is such an interesting place." So I think that
Yeah.
kind of celebration of local travel or further afield within the UK travel is great. So thank you so much. And yeah, definitely check out all the stuff Anna's doing and read your book because it's all very exciting and positive. So great to have Anna joining us. Me. I always say us because I'm used to hosting a podcast with two people, but so great to have Anna joining me. I just really love, as I said, positivity about travel and the UK and all of that. Travel by public transport is an adventure, and that's the bonus of it. It's not that kind of slog. It's taking 7 days to travel by bus from Glen to John O'Groats. Not that everybody has to do that, but if you want to, it's a good adventure. I'm going to put up my end slide with Anna's stuff, but there's a lot more than I could fit on that slide, so I'll make sure that if you're listening to this on a podcasting app or on YouTube, I'll put that in the notes. So thank you so much for watching or listening today, and I will be back in